This episode of Bulletproof Cash Flow is brought to you by Realty Dynamics. Learn how people like you can build substantial passive income while creating wealth for the long term through real estate investing. Visit rdyne.com. That's RDYNE.com.
Learning from all of the aftermath of that. And I think that was, I think that was probably the best time to get started in real estate. But I had the opportunity of really learning from a developer that had weathered the 0809, and just hearing their war stories was really fascinating to me, because they were like, look, like 0809, nobody was doing anything. Like, we couldn't get anybody to buy our tax credits. So typically there's like a market for tax credits on the affordable side. And so we would typically sell them for 85 to 95 cents on the dollar. So the investor can get some return on their capital.
Working because you want to, not because you have to, is financial freedom. And we want to help you create that. Welcome to the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. We're going to teach you how to achieve lifetime financial freedom through real estate investment. Your host is a multifamily syndicator and property developer. He's done deals reaching into the hundreds of millions of dollars. You'll hear from experts in all aspects of real estate investment, finance, development, and management. Everything you need is right here. This is the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. And this is your host, Augustino Pintus.
Hey everyone, it's Augustino. Here in the United States, there is a need for affordable housing. Now, while many of us are buying existing value-add deals, we are also building these assets or repurposing old buildings to fill the gap, all of which are near and dear to my heart. Now, our next guest knows all about this. He believes there is a large need for quality, affordable housing, and he is doing something about it. He and his team are focused on multifamily, affordable, and workforce housing deals in the Southeast United States. Now, as the founder of Holladay Ventures, he and his team have sourced and developed over $237 million of projects and helped create over 1,300 units of affordable housing. Now, he is also runs one of the top real estate podcasts out there, the Monumental Podcast, where he really sits down with top leaders and entrepreneurs that are making massive change in the world. Now, with all that, I'd like to welcome Evan Holladay to the show. Evan, thanks for coming on, man.
Yes, thank you for having me, Augustino. I appreciate it, and glad to be here.
Yes, I'm glad you're here too, man. We'll get to catch up again. So now, guys, if you like what Evan has to say, you can reach him at his contact page at holladayventures.com. Okay, Evan, go ahead and tell listeners a little bit about your background. I know you were on the show some time ago, but maybe give the audience a little bit of how you got started and what you're up to today.
Yeah, definitely. So a little bit about me. So I really got into and found my passion in college. And I was very fortunate and blessed for that. But I really didn't know exactly what I wanted to do or where I wanted to go. And I started going down the pre-med route. And very early on, I realized I'm like, science and chemistry, not my thing. I want to help people, but I don't know. I don't think that's the way. And so one thing led to another. And I saw this developer on our college campus. I went to University of Louisville. I was like, man, what that guy's doing sounds really fun. And he's literally changing the neighborhood forever. At least for the next, 100 years. And that excited me. It got me all pumped up. I'm like, all right, I'm going to meet the guy. I'm going to figure out how to work for him and learn everything I can. And so was able to, through a mutual connection, get introduced, started working for him. I really had to impress him, though. He's like, all right, bring people out to my groundbreaking. So I helped bring like 100 plus people out to his groundbreaking. That really helped open the door. And from that point on, I learned all about development, ground up development, specifically student housing development. And I learned a whole lot from that experience. I think one thing I learned is I wanted to do housing differently than that experience, because I wanted to do housing with impact and provide quality, affordable housing for people that normally can't afford quality housing. And so that's when I got into the world of affordable housing and public-private partnerships, working with cities to help really solve the issue that pretty much any major metro city is facing today. And that is really quality, affordable housing, or like, as I like to say, attainable housing, because affordable can sometimes have negative stigmas around it.
No,
And
you're
one
right about
thing led
that.
to it. Yeah.
You're right about that. Yeah, we'll get into that too. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. And so one thing led to another. We actually started a modular development company in college that segued into working for an affordable developer. And while I was at that company, it just gave me direct access to very experienced developers. I think the principals at that company had over 100 years of experience. So I had direct access to that and really was thrown straight in the deep end. And they're like, hey, go source deals for us and go make it happen. It was very sink or swim. And I think that forced me to get outside my comfort zone and learn and take action. And so the very first deal I did, I was 24 years old. And we closed 192 units of affordable housing in Baton Rouge. And that was a deal that I did from beginning to end. And that was such a learning curve for me. It was also humbling because it took me 2 years to get it closed. And I had to have patience throughout that whole process. But since then, I've grown so much and learned so much, and eventually started my own company, Holladay Ventures, where we focus not only on building quality, attainable housing, but then also providing very important, very needed supportive services and resident empowerment services to our residents. So we can not only provide the quality housing, but then help give them a leg up, give them the right mindset, the right mental tools, the right life tools to be able to work their way out of affordable housing and potentially all the way through to home ownership and maybe even investing in real estate themselves. So that's a big part of our mission. Is we see that we can have massive impact if we help people from a housing perspective first, and how that really affects their health, their jobs, their family life, their stability, their happiness. And so that's really become a big part of our mission at Holladay Ventures. We're based in Nashville, but we're doing work all over the Southeast, and really just love what we do. We partner with nonprofits, we partner with cities, we partner with impact-driven investors to really make all this happen. And we typically focus in on new construction, but we also do some acquisition of existing and preserving of affordable housing as well.
It's funny that we grew our business by acquiring stabilized B and C type assets, mostly C class, workforce housing, which is also, I guess you could say, affordable as well. And I think that when we were trying to raise capital for these deals, or when we did raise capital for these deals, there was often people often think that just because it's affordable, they automatically go to subsidized and Section 8 and all that other stuff, which is entirely different. Affordable doesn't necessarily mean
Right.
Section 8, nor does it mean it's government subsidized, not always, nor does it mean it's workforce either. These are very, very different things. So maybe just for the people that don't understand what the differences are, maybe talk a little bit about, very high level, what you're doing specifically with the type of stuff that you're building these days and acquiring very specifically. You're not doing I guess you say it. I'll allow you to instead of me telling you.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because there are many different definitions of affordable. There's many different perceptions of what affordable is and what it isn't. And so what we specifically do at Holladay Ventures, what our core niche is we focus on really like in Nashville, for example, we focus in on families making roughly like $35,000 to about $75,000 a year. So that's kind of like your middle to lower middle income income brackets. And so those are, like in Nashville, that's your teachers, your firefighters, your retail workers, your waitress, your secretary, entry-level positions. These are really like the backbone of your economy and the backbone of your city and your community. But we partner with the state housing agency. They provide tax credits, which helps us finance roughly like 40% of the cost of construction. And that helps us be able to keep our rents lower so that our residents never pay more than 30% of their monthly paycheck. And so there are more of the public housing, which typically supports individuals making, like permanently supportive, making zero money per year, all the way up to about like $30,000 per year. And we sometimes provide that housing as well. And that's very much needed, but that typically is mainly served by nonprofits or housing authorities who have the ability to offer that deeply affordable rent. And then there's more of the workforce, which is kind of one income level, I would say, above where we typically offer. And we do some workforce housing as well. And that's typically families making from about 55 to 85,000 a year.
Hey, Augustino here, and I would love to connect directly with you. Text the word books to 844-428-1344 to receive weekly book recommendations from me. All right, very different scenarios. Now, I know you spent some time in property management, and I actually own one of these subsidized types of deals. So I know that they're very, very different to run and operate compared to the workforce housing as well. So you're building this stuff. Are you hanging on to it? Are you selling it off? And then how, if you are keeping them, how are you running them? How are you operating them in a way that really protects the asset? Because I'll tell you, man, those deals they're tough to execute. They really are.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, to answer your question high level, we hold everything. And partially a big part of that is the financing that we use, the tax credits. We have a 15-year compliance period. So we're at least holding it for 15 years. Our goal is to really, at year 20 to 25, we'll actually recapitalize, put tax credits on it again, and recommit to the affordability, but get the tax credits to help pay for the rehab. But to really manage well an affordable or workforce community, it really comes down to your property management company that knows that niche of housing. Because you're right, it's a different demographic, it's a different way of management, and I think you just have to have the expertise at the property management level, both the regional level and the on-site level, because there's also a lot more compliance that goes into these properties. We typically always need a discount to market rents because there's a lot of income verification, there's a lot of background check, there's a lot of really hoops our residents have to jump through in order to get this affordable rent, and so you have to have staff that understand that and understand the community and how to best operate that. But we think we really separate our communities from others through our ability to do the resident empowerment services. And that's something we're really focusing in on this year, developing that out so we can offer that service to our residents. And I'll give you one little snippet. My wife is helping move this forward. Is we are working on providing complimentary life coaching and group life coaching to our residents, just helping them from a standpoint of saying, hey, what is the roadblock to you, getting the job that you need, or, getting certain things accomplished in life that you want, or finding happiness for your family, or whatever it is that you want to get done. We're working on providing that as a service to our residents to help them unlock the next step and be able to live, a happier, more fulfilled life.
Oh, that's great. That's good that you're helping those folks out, because for many of those people, they do need that kind of help. Sometimes it's getting the right guidance, figuring out how to establish goals, for instance, in their life. It's huge. It's huge for these folks.
Yeah,
so
and honestly, I've benefited a whole lot from a coach. I mean, we all, in essence, need a coach or mentors in our life. We've benefited so much from coaching. We saw how can we provide that as a service for our residents.
Yeah. And I mean, I took up some coaching as well in the past for, just for career coaching, business coaching, figure out what I was going to take my company next. And it's been huge. That type of guidance can really help change someone's life. So it's great that you're doing that. That's super. So, these days when you're building stuff, obviously, with inflation, with the pricing pressures on supplies these days, how's that really impacted your business now in terms of I guess the quality of the finishes that you're putting into these assets, or has it slowed down your ability to really get these developments completed?
Yeah, I would say it's put a lot of uncertainty and unpredictability into our construction costs and our construction timelines. I think the way we've been able to best respond to this has really been through finding creative funding sources to help offset that increase in construction costs. I mean, just 2021, I think we went up over the span of the last, like from January to December, I think our pricing went up like 15 to 17%, somewhere in that range,
Wow.
on a lot of our projects. And we even had a project, was mid buying out lumber, and lumber comes in $2 million over budget. Where originally it was supposed to be $3 million. It went almost like literally $2 million over that. We ended up buying out at $5 million, to just give you one example. And so, we can't, like a market rate community, just raise the rents and pass that on to our residents. And obviously there's an upward, diminishing ability to do that based on the market. But that is one thing a market rate property can do. We, on the other hand, in affordable, are capped on our rents because they're based on the area median income of whatever city you develop in. And so we've had to kind of get creative and work with state agencies, cities, and even private donors or private corporations that see the need to help affordable housing in the community where they're creating jobs, and figuring out how to creatively find partners that can help us offset that. We actually just had a call before this with a group that's going to help us on one of our projects that are currently under construction to help bring additional gap financing to help with construction pricing. But it has made everything slower. It's made everything more unpredictable. And I think it's just it's something that all of us in the real estate world have to play in that world now of like, hey, you gotta have more contingency, you gotta have longer construction schedules, and you gotta be prepared for the unknown and just be ready for that.
Yeah, and I'm assuming the fit and finishes you're putting in some of these projects are, they're, I guess you can say they're, I'm not gonna say they're cheaper finishes, but they're, I guess they fit the demographics going to be living there, right? I guess they're going to be a little more robust, I would assume, and easier to turn, right?
Yeah, we don't. I would say we probably wouldn't do the same finishes per se as like a luxury developer, because our biggest amenity is our rent. But we're still doing granite countertops. We're still doing large spacious units as much as we can. But I would say definitely on the amenity level, like your pool, we're not going to do like a $2 million pool. We're going to do something nice, but not over the top.
Right. Okay. All right. So let's dive into the investors now, because you touched on this earlier, that the investor is going to be putting down a deal like this. What sort of investor is really interested in doing the types of deals that you guys are putting out there?
Yeah, great question. So really high level, I think our investors, by and large, are impact driven. So they want something that they can get a great return, get a competitive return on, and feel good about what their money is doing and helping the community, helping the residents, helping provide quality, attainable housing. I think that's the core high level. That's our investor. And then above and beyond that, as far as what our investors can expect, there's a couple different ways to invest with us. But it's either we do like shorter term, like pre-development funds, where it'll help us get through the $2 to $3 million it takes to get a project through to completion and starting of construction. And then because we use tax credits, it usually will pay back our investors with the tax credit equity that we get. Because we typically have one investor on the actual end product, at least on the tax credit deals. Those are big banks who buy 100% of the credits and give us cash money in return to help finance 40% of the construction costs. So we have short-term options like that. And then on our workforce and market rate communities, we have more longer-term opportunities where our investors can invest alongside us and be involved in the project for the next 5 to 10 years. And then finally, we're also actually launching a fund this summer. It's called our Impact Development Fund, and that will allow our investors to be involved with multiple pre-development and pre-development of affordable and attainable housing, and be able to participate in some of the back end as well.
Nice. And we said the returns are competitive. Like, what sort of returns are you looking for without, of course, violating NACC laws? We're not going after that, guys. So it's more like, I know it's competitive. You already said that. Like, typically, what are you seeing these days?
Yeah, right now we're anywhere from 8 to 12% return per year. But we've seen groups that have said, hey, we're willing to take even less than that because we just want the impact. So we'll see where that goes, but I think we're happy giving our investors very competitive return and they get the impact piece.
Exactly. Now, are you doing opportunity zone type deals as well when you're doing when you're putting these deals together?
Yeah, we did one. I worked on one opportunity zone. This was like 2018. It was like very early stages of opportunity zone. And that was in Louisiana. That was the only one I've worked on so far. It's tough. Basically, with any opportunity zone, I feel like the deal has to make sense without it. And the opportunity zone is kind of like a nice cherry on top. But no, we haven't really doubled down on that specifically.
Interesting. And it's tough because I'm assuming the guys in the capital stack don't quite understand how the whole thing works then, right?
Well, typically, like on the affordable deals we do, there's like a pool of investors that know tax credits. And that's like almost solely what they do is just buy tax credits. Mm-hmm. And then there's, the group of investors that have capital gains, that understand opportunity zones, and the chances that those groups match up on our deal is just hard to make that specific alignment work because they have to understand tax credits. It's very complex, very nuanced structure. So the groups in tax credits that also need opportunity zone are very small.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, we've done, three deals now with OZ, and actually just about all of our deals have some sort of OZ component and tax credit type scenario too, right? So yes, we found the same thing where the lender had a hard time understanding the capital stack. And I think that if you're going to put together a very complex deal, especially a large deal, like the one we talked about earlier, the Rockefeller deal here, very large deal with an OZ component and tax credit component and tax abatement component and all these other scenarios that make the capital stack very complicated. The lenders had a hard time getting their head around it. And to that end, it also limits your ability to put deals together, right? Because you're going to have a smaller pool of lenders. And development's fun, but the right lender has to, the lender has to be interested in doing the deal too, right? And if you don't have the lender, unless you're funding the whole thing yourself, which you're probably not. So it really limits what you're doing, right? I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that was interesting on Rockefeller with, I'm sure there's many different layers to that.
Yeah, it was. It was crazy. So now, right now, are you thinking about jumping in out of your area and going to other areas as well? Or are you thinking you're just going to stay where you're at for the time being?
Yeah, good question. We've definitely broadened out as far as asset type, partially because there's a bottleneck of the amount of tax credit deals you can do in each state. And so we've looked at we're working on some workforce housing deals where it's non-tax credit, but there's still an affordability component to it. And then we're also doing some market rate development as well. So we're really hitting every spectrum of housing. And we're even doing some first-time home buyer for sale townhomes. So really excited to do that. We've never done first-time home buyer. Never done anything for sale for that matter, but that'll be part of a mixed-use development where we have 150 for rent up front and then 48 for sale townhomes in the back, and then a commercial mixed-use building at the very front.
Nice, good. It's going to be very different. Yeah, we're kind of doing the same sort of thing too. We're going to be building some townhomes and apartment, that type of component as well. So, looking forward to kicking that project off here in the next couple months. So. Yeah, it's nice exploring different realms, right? I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier in the green room is how fast can we get them done, right? Because something that I'm concerned about is another downturn, right? And speaking of that, how did you do in the 2008 downturn, and what do you think is going to happen if there's going to be another one coming up?
Yeah, great question. Well, I had the fortunate blessing of when I was born. So I was still actually in college when the 0809, I was basically going into college. And so I got to spend the first 4 years of the downturn learning from all of the aftermath of that. And I think that was, I think that was probably the best time to get started in real estate. But I had the opportunity of really learning from a developer that had weathered the 0809, and just hearing their war stories was really fascinating to me because they were like, look, like 0809, nobody was doing anything. Like we couldn't get anybody to buy our tax credits. So typically there's like a market for tax credits on the affordable side. And so we would typically sell them for 85 to 95 cents on the dollar, so the investor can get some return on their capital. And they said they're like, we had to sell tax credits in '09 or '10 or 2010 for like 45 cents.
Ooh.
And they had so much other grants and other money coming into the deal. That's the only way they could get it to work. But it's just mind blowing to me to think that like at one point there was no market for tax credits. And so I think that's the thing that we always have to be precarious about or prepared for is the unknown, and understanding that you have to have reserves, you have to have liquidity, you have to have access to capital because you don't know when that's going to happen, and you also have to just underwrite very conservative deals and not over leverage yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's something we're really trying to do now. Is we're partnering with one group, a corporate group that's getting into affordable housing, and we're lining up very, very cheap capital. It's like 2% debt, and that's crazy. That's unheard of. So we're lining that up for like a 20-year term. So we know as soon as we get that closed, that deal will be, no matter what happens in the market, our cost of capital is so low that we'll be able to weather that storm.
Isn't that crazy? I mean, it's that rate is actually cheaper than building something that's already stabilized or buying something that's already stabilized. Rather,
Right.
it's nuts. It's crazy.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think people realize they're like, oh, let's put our money into affordable housing because same thing. It's the impact people want, especially corporations now. They want that good PR, that good name in the community, and usually their investors are expecting it now. Every company's now going net zero energy, sustainability. I think now we're also outside of sustainability, we're also seeing it on the impact piece, which is helping us find creative ways to finance our deals.
yeah. And to your point, it's kind of like we're doing a deal right now, a development deal, where the rate we got on the term sheet was a 3.8 or 3.7% rate on a 30-year AM. It's kind of like it's better than buying something that's already stabilized, and it really is crazy these days of what's happening to the cost of money by itself. Yeah, but it's great. It works out great for the development side of things. If you have patient investors that will wait for the development to be completed before seeing that
Right.
return, it works out great for them. So. And I'm assuming, in your case, speaking of that too, the investors they have a catch-up period, right? By the time you get your certificate of occupancy, you get it occupied, then you start delivering your returns at that point, right? But whatever it takes to build out your projects, right?
Yeah, that's right. So typically, our construction schedules have been lengthened, like we talked about. So we used to be able to do it in 16 to 18 months. Now we're at like 18 to 20 to 22 months. But we typically deliver our first units and we start cash flowing about 16 to 18 months into a project.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's a typical scenario of any development. I think the difference is that you're making a difference to communities, and you're really helping folks out that really need a nice, clean, safe place to live. And that's awesome. That's great. That really is.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. One quick thing I wanted to add, though, I think every developer is actually doing good toward creating more housing, because at the end of the day, it's just a supply and demand problem. It's, we can't build fast enough to meet the amount of units that are actually needed in urban areas where people are moving. And so I think even market rate developers, even, what you're doing is much needed housing. because we just need every type of housing. I think affordable housing is important, but I think every type of housing is important because everybody's got a different income level, a different taste, a different style, a different want, a different need. So we really just need to be building, 10x what we're building today in order to actually meet the demand.
Yeah. Well, for the properties that we're building here in Cleveland, in and around Cleveland, it does have an affordability component too. So typically to get some of these benefits that I mentioned earlier, yes, there is an affordability component. There's luxury stuff down here downtown. Where there's a luxury component with a handful of these units that's just to get the tax benefit, they have to do it. So yeah, it's but to your point, there's still a need for housing, and it really is kind of crazy when you think about it, right? But yeah, it's out there. It's out there. So works well for us.
Yeah.
As developers, works well for us. So cool. If for someone listening and maybe they're kicking around getting into development or even into multifamily, what sort of bulletproof advice would you have to offer them?
Yes, my bulletproof advice would be find a mentor, or I think one of the most underrated ways to get into a business is work for somebody else and be an apprentice. Think of yourself as an apprentice, picking up the skills firsthand, learning from the best of the best. I think that's one way that I was able to quickly at a young age dive into and do big development deals. I feel like I kind of snuck in the back door because, I went from never doing a development deal to doing almost a $30 million deal to start. That never would have happened had I started out on my own. It would have taken me many, many years of trial and error and maybe losing money to figure that out of how to get to that level. And now, we do deals 2 to 3 times that size. And it doesn't concern me. It doesn't worry me because I had that experience. And I have that mentorship and apprenticeship. So I would highly recommend everybody either find a mentor or find an apprenticeship opportunity where you can learn from the best of the best.
Yeah, and I would also, and let me ask you this, when you were doing all this and learning from these folks, were they paying you or are you just doing it on your own, right?
Yeah, they were paying me, but it was pennies on the dollar.
Yeah. So that's something for anyone listening right now. It's if you really want to do this business and you have something great to offer to a potential mentor, you reach out. Don't expect to get paid at all. Just learn and acquire the information. It's maybe you'll be doing $100 million deals soon enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Very good. All right, guys. Well, if you want to reach out to Evan, you can reach out to his through him to his website, holladayventures.com. Hope you got a little insight on how development works, and of course the need for housing right now, and especially in the affordability component too. There's a great deal of need out there, and both Evan and I are very happy to be part of it. So thanks for tuning in. See you next episode. Take care.
You've been listening to the Bulletproof Cash Flow Show. We hope you've enjoyed the show. We know we had fun. Make sure to visit our Apple Podcast page and leave us a 5-star review. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. For real estate coaching, events, and resources, hit up bulletproofcashflow.com. Till next time.
No information in this episode should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Any investment opportunities mentioned on this show are limited to accredited or sophisticated investors. Any investments will only be made with proper disclosure and subscription documentation and subject to all applicable laws. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice.